Is it working? Because I just tried to go live and it crashed. Let me see here. Let me log in. Let me point the mic actually towards me. Oh, wow. It's on the TV in the other room. Because I just tried to go live and it crashed. Okay, I have sound. I have. Um, 1 second here. Okay. I am late, but I have a better excuse this time than the last time I was late when I was taking a nap. I finished my Sophia course, got it sent off to the school. So both Sophia classes are done. Both Sophia classes are submitted. Should take a couple of days for them to get the transcripts, get applied. Hopefully, I did it all correctly. And I just have to take my final two courses, my IDS class and some IT class that I don't really know. A couple things real quick. First, a moment of silence for a dearly departed Cobra JFS. If you don't know who he is, he was kind of considered a lolcow, kind of because people like picking on him. He was a YouTuber who he had his problems, but he was pretty much harmless. But people on the internet are horrible, horrible people. He was found dead the other day by his father. Kind of sad. So I just thought maybe we'd have a quick moment of silence for him. May YouTube's gothic bad boy rest in peace. Also, before we get started, I need to let the dog out. I haven't let him out yet. I was busy. He's over here crossing his legs. So I am going to take a brief moment to let the dog out to do its business. So bear with me here. I'm going to put a little. I don't have anything fancy. Be right back. Dog needs to pee. Give me hopefully just a couple of minutes here. And I gotta grab my hoodie because I need a hoodie. So I'm going to be right back. One moment. That's not it. That's it. Okay. Okay. I'm trying to. I have my video capture off. How come I still have camera? How do I do this? Oh, now I got sound. I don't want sound. I have. Oh my gosh. Worst stream ever. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. How do I do this? Why? Um. Do I go to... Did that work? Studio mode? I don't think so. I doubt it. No, I can't. What a mess. How? Do I go to... Did that work? Studio mode? I don't think so. I doubt it. It did not work. How do I... How do I... Because I can just click mute and up, move down, transform. What if I do this? That, like, that got taken off the preview screen, but it didn't get taken off of the... Oh, now I don't... Video capture device. Okay. Well, now I don't... Well, now I don't have... Oh my gosh. Now I lost... Worst stream ever. Uh-huh. Windows capture, video capture display. What is going on here? Oh, now I got... Oh my lord. Delete. Remove. Yes. Display. Video capture. I don't see. I mean, well, I can see I have video, but I can't see it in my preview. Oh. Now what? Now I don't have my picture. Okay. Since I don't have picture, I'm going to go ahead, let the dog out, do his thing. I'll come back. I'll try to figure it out because now I can't figure out how to get my camera back. So give me a few minutes here. I'll be back. Please like, subscribe, and share this horrible mess of a stream. Okay, I'm back. Now, can I... I don't know what I'm doing. Quick transition. Cut. Display. I should have camera. I have the display set. It should be up on top. I have it moved up in the order. I have a stinky ladybug that's trying to eat me. I have it. Oh. I think I got it. I don't know what I did, but it just decided to start working. Now if I can see it pop up on my stream. Maybe. Yeah, okay. I don't need to be that big. Nobody's really here to see my face. Let me make sure I still have sound. Now if I can see it pop up on... Okay. Wow. That was painful. Okay. Let me, just in case I have to do login information. We are here to do the CS50 HarvardX class for Python. So if you were here for the first one, we got about halfway through the first episode before I had to call it quits. My chair is extremely squeaky. It's annoying me. Don't know how far we'll get because, to be honest, we're already 20 minutes in and I was hoping at least get the first video done. Where is the video at? Visit the link. Oh, that's the problem set. Where's the video? Right. Hey, whoa, hold on there, buddy. Whoa there, buddy. Alright, got this. We need Visual Studio. We'll do something like this. That works. Alright, before we get into this, CS50 license. Let me find it here. The CS50 license. Why am I not finding it? CS50 fair use license. I don't know how to spell license. Where is it? Here we go. All right. This course is licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 4.0 International License. This is a human-readable summary of the license. The official translations of the license are available in other languages. You are free to share, copy, and redistribute this material in any medium or format. We are allowed to do this, people. That is very generous of them. Adapt, remix, transform, and build upon the material. I don't know how much I'm going to do any of that. I am just taking the course and I'm inviting you all to come along with me. I encourage you to guys to go over and gals to go over to EDX and to sign up yourself and take the course. You get like a little free certificate at the end, or you can pay real money and get like a verified certificate. And then you can tell everybody you went to Harvard. Just kidding. I don't know if you can do that last part. Under the following terms, attribution, you must give appropriate credit, provide a link to the license. In the description, there's a link to this license, and indicate if changes were made. You are seeing the changes I am making to this. You may do so in any reasonable manner, but not in a way that suggests the licensor endorses you or your use. They do not endorse me. They don't know I exist. They would probably be, saddened by me and my skill level, but we are not affiliated. Non-commercial. You may not use this material for commercial purposes. My channel is not monetized. If you get an ad at any point, it's not me, it's YouTube. I am not monetized. This video is not monetized. In the future, if I do get monetized, I will make sure that these remain unmonetized. And also, I don't have a link to my tip jar. So don't go tipping me. Not in these videos. These videos are just for fun. And share alike. If you remix, transform, or build upon the material, you must distribute your contributions under the same license as the original. Feel free. You can use my videos all you want. I don't care. Just consider this. I know YouTube has their own licenses. But if you use my video, if you use this video for any purposes whatsoever, no strikes, not on my end. And no additional restrictions. So there you go. With that underway, and almost 30 minutes into this stream, let's get started. Remember, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. If you enjoy this stuff, I don't see how you could possibly be enjoying it right now unless you just like me fighting with OBS for 20 minutes and then letting the dog out to pee. We ended off with parameters. So there's an hour left of this. We're going to try. I'm going to try to at least finish this. Maybe even start on the next one. I had every intentions to stream like 6 hours, 7 hours today. But between my first stream and then banging out that Sophia real quick, and I'm already losing my voice. I don't know if you can tell. I'm losing my voice. But this one shouldn't require me a lot of talking. So I will shut up now. I'll hit play. I will check my volumes and everything real quick. Make sure my volumes are all right. We're going to get started. I want to back it up just a little bit so I can do some checking here.
And it will move the cursor to the next line because I didn't override the value of end there. Just to see this more explicitly, if you do something cryptic like, well, I have no idea what's going on, let me just put in temporarily 3 question marks here, we'll see the results of this too. Let me go back down to my terminal window, run python of hello.py, what's your name, David, and now you see literally, really ugly output, but you see literally what's going on. Hello, comma, space.
Sounds good on my end.
Question marks end that print statement, and then you see DAV ID. So not a good outcome, but it demonstrates just how much control we have here too. And let me rewind further. Recall that in our other version of this, when I passed in hello, comma, and name, they were separated by a single space. So python of hello.py, DAVID, enter, that just worked. Well, what if we override the value of sep for separator? Instead of being one space, we could say something like, question mark, question mark, question mark, just to wrap our minds around what's going on there. Let me now do python of hello.py, DAVID, enter, and you see 2. These 2 inputs, hello, comma, and the name, are now separated in an ugly way by 3 question marks because I've overridden the default behavior of sep. And even though the documentation uses single quotes, I've been in the habit of using double quotes. In Python, you can use either. Strictly speaking, it doesn't matter, but you should be consistent, and I generally always use double quotes. Python's documentation though, always uses single.
I wanted to have Copilot open.
Questions now.
Drag it over to my other screen here.
And allow me to propose that we give these an official name. Up until now, when we've been passing values to print, those are called positional parameters. positional in the sense that the first thing you pass to print gets printed first. The second thing you pass to print after a comma gets printed second, and so forth. But there's also these things.
It's like an order of operations.
Parameters named SEP, separator, or end, END, for the line ending. Those are named parameters because, one, they're optional, and you can pass them in at the end of your print statement, but you can also use them by name.
This may be a weird question, but I was wondering, what if someone wants to add actually quotation marks within the quotation marks?
Oh,
yeah, how you think. This is what
it's the slash. That's the slash, right?
Right. This is all sounding great, at least as programming goes.
Somewhere we use a slash.
Print a quote. That's a really good question. Well, let's see if we can't figure this out. Suppose that I want to print out not just the user's name. Let me simplify this further. Let me go ahead and get rid of a lot of this, and let me just say something like, hello, maybe I'm being a little sarcastic here. Hello, friend, in that kind of tone. Well, this is not going to work, actually, because you are trying to use quotes to be like friend in finger quotes, but you're also trying to end the sentence. And if I try running this, let's do this. Python if hello.py, you'll see that this is just invalid syntax. Perhaps you forgot a comma, and this is actually a bit annoying. Sometimes the error messages you see are misleading. Like the computer, the language doesn't really know what's going on, so it gives its best guess, but it's not necessarily correct.
It's not a mind reader.
I can solve this problem in a couple of ways. I can do this. I can change my outermost quotes to single quotes, because recall a moment ago I said you could use double quotes or single quotes so long as you're consistent. So that's fine. If you use single quotes on the outside, you can then use double quotes on the inside, and you'll see them literally. So, for instance, if I run python if hello.py, there we go, hello, friend. But there's another way. If you insist on using double quotes, as you might want to, just to be consistent, you can also use that backslash character again. We saw the backslash in a moment ago, and that meant we don't want a literal N to be in the output. We wanted a new.
If you watch the first part, I kept wanting to use backslashes. Any backslashes had a part in Python, but I just could never remember where. I have been vindicated. Is that the right word?
So the backslash actually represents what's called an escape character. An escape character is one that you can't just type necessarily once on your keyboard. You need to express it with multiple characters. So I can actually put backslashes in front of these inner double quotes so that the computer realizes, oh, wait a minute, those aren't literal, those aren't...
Yeah, and then if you look here, you have one in front of the backslash, or the parentheses. One of the things that's easy to, at least was easy for me to overlook when I was working on it through school, I kept wanting to put the backslashes on this side and then this side as a way of encompassing it, but we're trying to tie the backslash to the comma, or not the comma, the ticks. I have a tick.
Aren't quotes that finish or start the thought, they're literal quotes. So now let me go back to my terminal window, run python of hello.py, enter, and now it's working as well. So escaping is a general technique that allows us to do that too. And if I may, let me rewind now on these examples and go back to where we left off with my code. I'm just undoing all of that because I want to get back to the point ultimately of specifying now a final way of solving this problem. Well, it turns out that we have yet another way we can solve this problem, which is perhaps the most frequently done now, or at least the most elegant when it comes to setting us up for longer and longer uses of strings. You can use a relatively new feature of Python that allows you to do this. You can literally put not the name of the variable like that in your string, because we already saw this is wrong, right? If you do this, you will literally see hello, comma, name. But what if I do this? What if I put curly braces or curly brackets around the variable's name? Notice VS Code is actually very subtly changing the color of it. So VS Code knows something.
Hold on. Paulo. I need to go back. I'm not in the right. Not in the right directory here. OneDrive desktop. CS50 underscore. Okay. Sorry. I don't know why they didn't keep me in the right directory there. Sorry, sir.
Something interesting is going on here. Let me run this program, but I'm not done yet. Python of hello.py, enter. DAVID, enter. Okay, obviously not what I want, but I need to tell Python that this is a special string. This is what we're going to call a format string, or an F string, or relatively new
I remember.
Python in the past few years. That tells Python to actually format stuff in the string in a special way. And the symbol via which you do this is a little weird, but
where's
this is
my
what the
curly?
rule shows. If you put a F at the beginning of the string, right before the first quote mark, that's a clue to Python that, ooh, this is a special string. Let me format this in a special way for you. Let me now rerun the program. Python hello.py, enter.
I remember doing
enter,
F
strings. And now we
strings.
see the goal this whole time, hello, comma, David. We don't start with this way, because I think if we did this the first way, you'd be like, why are we doing this? What are all these magical symbols? But this is just yet another way to solve the same problem. But let me propose that we consider now yet other things we can do with strings. And it turns out that even as we've been doing some relatively simple operations here, we've generally been trusting that the user is going to cooperate. And that is to say that they're going to actually type in what we want them to type. Now, just because they type a string, though, doesn't mean it's going to look the way we want. You and I, honestly, as humans, are actually in the habit.
So we're going to differentiate like letters and numbers. So you have like your integers, your floats, your floats, your characters, etc.
Websites and apps of like accidentally hitting the space bar a lot, either at the beginning of our input or at the end. Maybe because the space bar tends to be so big, it's pretty common to get accidental spaces before or after some user's input. You and I are definitely in the habit of not necessarily capitalizing words like we should. If we're sending text messages, we're probably being a little quick and just sending everything in lowercase, for instance, if that's your style, if your phone's not fixing it for you. Maybe in a formal letter you would capitalize things properly, but you and I as humans, we can't really be trusted to type things in a nice way necessarily when using some piece of software, be it an app or a website or something else. But it turns out that strings themselves come with a lot of built-in functionality. You can see all of that in Python's own documentation here. The string data type that we've been talking about comes with a lot of functionality built in that means that we can manipulate the user's input to do more than just join it with something else, like hello. We can actually clean it up or reformat it in a way that hopefully looks a little better for us. So let me go back to my code here, and let me just demonstrate what might happen if a user doesn't cooperate. If I go ahead here and run Python of hello.py, enter, let me just sloppily hit the space bar a few too many times. Why? I just wasn't paying attention. And I'm going to type in my name, DAVID, and I don't know, I hit the space bar a couple more times. Like, it's kind of a mess. It's all lowercase. That's not going to necessarily look grammatically right. It's got spaces here and here. The program is going to print exactly that. And that looks really bad, at least if we're prioritizing a sentence in grammar. Like, why are there so many spaces after the comma? This is not a very nice way to greet your users. But we can clean this up. It turns out that built into strings, which again is this data type, so to speak, this type of data in Python, is the ability to actually do things to that string. So let me do this. I can actually go ahead and do something like this. Name equals name.strip. And what does this do? Remove white space from string. And what do I...
So, going to do hashtag remove white space from string name. I don't remember doing strip in school. Don't think I needed that.
What do I mean by this? Well, on the right-hand side, notice I've written the variable name called name. I've then used a period or a dot, and then I seem to be doing what's a function, right? Anytime we've seen this function thus far, we see it's the function's name, print, or input.
Notice I did it. It took out the first spaces, but it didn't take out these spaces.
Then we see a parenthesis, then another parenthesis, and that's exactly what I see here. But I'm using this function a little differently. Technically, this function is, in this context, called a method. And what do I mean by that? Well, if name is a string, aka stir, well, it turns out, according to the documentation, there's a lot of functions that come with strings in Python. And you can access that functionality by using the name of a string, like literally name here, then a period, then the name of the function, and then an open parenthesis and a closed parenthesis. Maybe some arguments inside of those parentheses, but in this case, it doesn't need any arguments. I just want to strip the space from the left and the space from the right of the user's input. But that's not enough. I want to remember that I've stripped off that white space on the left and the right, so I'm going to use the equal sign again here. And notice that just as before, this doesn't mean equality, this means assignment from right to left. So when this line of code here, name.strip, returns to me, aka a return value, it will return the same thing that the user typed in, but with no more white space to the left or to the to the right. So then the equal sign assignment is going to copy that value from the right to the left, thereby updating the value inside of my name variable. So you can not only assign values to variables, you can absolutely change the value of variables by just using the assignment operator, the equal sign, again and again and again. And it will just keep copying from right to left whatever the new value should be. So now, if I rerun this program, Python of hello.py, enter, I have DAVID, well, let's do it again. Space, 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 DAVID in all lowercase, space, space, enter. It's better. It hasn't fixed my capitalization, so I'm still being a little sloppy with the first D, but it has stripped off all of that extra space. Super minor detail, right? Like, this isn't all that exciting, but it just speaks to the power of what you can do with just a single line of code. Now, what else can I do here? Well, I could capitalize the user's input. Let me go ahead and try this. It turns out that I could also do this, name.capitalize. So let me go ahead and capitalize user's name. And again, I'm making comments, and there's no one right way to write the comments. I'm just using some short English phrases here to remind myself of what I'm doing. What's now going on here? Well, let me go ahead and run Python of hello.py, enter, space, 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 DAVID, space, space, enter. Okay, now it's looking prettier, right? No matter how the user typed in their name, even a little sloppily, I'm now fixing that. But let's try something. I'm getting a little curious here. How about this? Space, 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 DAVID, space, Malin.
Yeah,
I'll use my last name now. Enter. Okay, so ironically, capitalize is not really capitalizing everything we want. It's clearly capitalizing what? Just the very first letter. So it turns out that, again, there's other functions in Python that come with strings. And if we poke around the documentation, scrolling through a URL like that, I bet we'll find another solution, one of which is actually this. Let's actually change this to title. There's yet another function that come with strings called title that do title-based capitalization, just like a book or a person's name, capitalizing the first letter of each word. And this is just going to do a little more work for us. So let's go ahead and run this. And as an aside, I'm kind of tired now at this point of typing Python, Python, Python all the time. It turns out that when using a command line interface like this, you can actually go back through all of your old commands. What I just did a moment ago was I hit the up arrow.
Up arrow.
That immediately goes back through my history of all
Or
of
you
the
can just
commands
get
I've
one of
ever
these
typed.
little run
So
buttons.
this is just a faster way now for me to repeat myself than typing everything manually. Let me go ahead and hit enter. Space, 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 DAVID, Malin, space, space, all lowercase, enter. Now it's looking better. Now
Oh my gosh, that
clean things up. But what about my code? I've got like 8 lines of code now, 4 of which are comments, 4 of which are actual code. Do I really need this much? Well, not necessarily. Watch what I can also do in Python. Let me not bother capitalizing the user's name separately. Let me say this, and capitalize user's name. I can chain these functions together. I can add title to the end of this. And now what's happening? Well, again, with a line of code like this, you first focus on what's to the right of the equal sign. Then we'll get to the left of the equal sign. What's on the right of the equal sign? This line here. Well, what does this mean? get the value of the name variable, like DAVID space MALAN, then strip off the white space on the left and the right. That is going to return a value. It's going to return DAVID space MALAN without any white space to the left or right. What do you want to do with that return value? You want Python to title case it. That is, go through every word in that resulting string and fix the first letter of the first word, the first letter of the second word, and so forth. And then, now we can finish our thought, copy the whole thing from right to left into that same name variable. And you know what? I can take this even one step further. Why don't we go ahead and do this if we want? Let me get rid of all of that, and let me just do strip and title on that first line. And now we've gone from like 8 lines of code to 4. It's a lot tighter, it's a lot neater, and even though reasonable people might disagree, it's arguably better because it's just easier to read. Fewer lines of code, fewer opportunities for mistakes. It just allows me to move on with my next problem to solve. All right, let me pause here and see if there's any questions on these methods. A method is a function that's built in to a type of value, like these functions are, or on f strings, which we saw a moment ago.
Yes, hi, thanks, David. So is there a way to remove the spaces between the spaces that I might have added?
A short answer, no. If you read the documentation at that same URL earlier, you'll see that strip removes from the left and the right, but not in between. In fact, there's 2 other functions that come with strings. One's called lstrip, the other's called rstrip, that allow you to do one or the other. If we want to start getting rid of space in the middle, we're going to have to do a different trick altogether.
What's the trick?
Functions can be combined like this, dot strip, dot title you have combined. So how many we can combine?
Yeah, a really good question. Technically,
All
as
of
many
them.
as you want. But at some point, your code's going to start to look really, really bad, right? Because the line of code's going to get really, really long. It's eventually going to maybe wrap around again and again. So at some point, you just kind of say, like, that's too many. And you start breaking it up into multiple lines like I did, maybe reassigning the value to the variable as needed. And this is actually a good question. If I can pivot, Divya, off your question, I mean, what do people think? If we could go ahead and put everyone's hands down for a moment, let me ask this. Is the way I've done this now, with strip and title and input all in the same line, better than my previous approach? In Zoom, you can use the yes icon or the no icon.
Yeah, I think
if
so.
If you think this version is better, say yes.
It's less busy.
If you think this previous version was better, for instance, this one here, where we had everything broken out, say no. And then we'll see why in just a moment.
I'm right.
Earlier that reasonable people can disagree, and that's absolutely the case.
Nope.
Doing it one way or the
My
other
way
isn't
or the highway.
necessarily best, at least if you can
Just like Limp
justify
Bizkit's, my way or the highway.
version here. All right, so we're seeing a lot of yeses and a lot of nos. Why don't we go ahead and call on one of the yeses if we could? Someone who's voting yes, why do you think the current version of this code is indeed better than the previous longer version of the code?
Less chance for
I think it's
mistakes.
more readable, so I can say, hey, this is the name this is the name variable. It gets some input, and then remove the space and give it a title, and there you go. You have a hello name.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. It's very readable, at least if you're in the habit, as you are in English, of reading left to right. It just kind of flows very naturally as a result. The line is not really that long. It's certainly fitting nicely onto the screen, so I think that's a good argument. How about a counterpoint, though? Someone who voted no, if we could call on someone who thinks this is worse.
Because it's not readable at all. It seems like it's a very long line, so I think it's better to separate.
Yeah, I think that's persuasive too, right? It's getting a little longer, and even though
He's
my
wrong.
sentence here, what's your name, is relatively short, you could imagine that this could get even uglier quickly. If I were asking a longer question of the user, that's going to make this line of code even longer, and therefore
But
less
we're
readable.
not.
It might be less obvious to me or my colleagues
We're just
that
doing
I am
two right
calling
now.
strip, or that I am calling title. It might be kind of an unexpected surprise. So I think that's reasonable too. In short, there is no right answer here, and in fact, part of the process of getting better at programming is...
I think there's a happy medium. Say, as long as it's, fits on the viewable screen and you're not having to, scroll over. Obviously, it'd be easier if you could just look like right here, I can see this. I can see that it's stripped. I can see that it's titled. I can see the input. But if I had to scroll over, that would be a pain in the butt, especially considering that, a program or whatever could have thousands, if not millions, of lines of code. Just that little bit of scrolling over would add so much if you're trying to like fix a problem or something. Maybe he'll say that. Let's hope he says that.
Is getting your own sense of style, or working for a company where they might prescribe which way is better than the other because they just want everyone doing the same thing, even though reasonable people might disagree. Ultimately, though, so long as you have what's a pretty good argument in favor of one way or the other, like ultimately that's what's important. If you're just doing things because you don't really know which one's better, that's not great. But if and when you start to acquire opinions, and if your boss, if your teacher, if your colleague, your friend can challenge you and say, wait, why did you do it like this? They might not agree with you, but at least have an answer, and that should be sufficiently persuasive in general. Now, strings come with a whole bunch of other methods as well, among which is one called split, which can, as the name suggests, split a string into multiple smaller substrings, so to speak. For instance, if
this could be a callback to the extra spaces in between the names, where if you split it, you can get rid of the extra spaces in between the names. Foreshadowing that.
the human here is in the habit of typing in their first name, then a space, and then their last name, and you want to go ahead and greet them only by first name, well, we could actually leverage that single space between the first name and last name and split that string into two smaller substrings. How can we do this? Well, let me go ahead and in between these lines proactively comment that we're about to split user's name into first name and last name. And then let's go ahead and take that name variable, which currently contains something like, presumably, David space Malin, and let me go ahead and call split and pass in as the argument to split a single white space, thereby
So we're not
indicating that I indeed want to split on that
So we're not doing name equals name dot split.
character. Now it turns out split's going to return a sequence of values, ideally a first name and then a last name, and we can actually in Python assign both of those values from that sequence at once to some variables. For instance, first, comma, last equals, and that's going to have the effect from right to left of putting the first such value in the first variable, the second such value in the second variable. So now on my last line of code, I can go in and say hello, not to the full name, something like David
First
Malin.
name.
I can just say hello, comma, first.
Okay,
All right, let's go ahead and clear
yeah,
my terminal
this is
window,
coming
run
back a
Python
little
of
bit.
hello.py and hit enter. I won't bother with any leading white space this time, but let me go ahead and type in David space Malin, and crossing my fingers as usual, hello David is what we
Boom.
now see. All right, so we've seen so many examples thus far involving strings, but certainly programs and programming languages can manipulate other
Oh,
types
you
of
can't
data
do.
as well. Let's go ahead and transition
Well,
into another very
There you go. Here's a good example. So I did Wayne last name. It only could do two names, so we should at some point make it so that only two, a first and a last, can be entered to not allow me to break the code. So, alright, INT, we're doing integers now. If you are watching, and if you're liking this, remember, like, subscribe, share the whole 9 yards. Helps me out a ton. Trying to grow the best I can.
common type of
If you're on part of the rewatch crew, make sure you do a little comment down below. Say hi. Let me know that you are here.
data in Python, in programming more generally, namely integers, otherwise known in Python as int, So just as str is short for string, so is int in Python short for integer. Well, what's an integer? Well, just like in math, it's a number like -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, and all the way toward negative infinity,
But
all
no-
the way toward
but
positive
no
infinity.
decimals.
There's no decimal point. in
That's
an
something
integer.
else.
It's just a number like -2, -1, 0,
We're on the
1,
same wavelength.
2, onward. That's an int. Of course, in the world of mathematics, there's lots of symbols that we use, and we've seen plus before, although we used it for a different purpose, but Python supports these symbols and more. And Python allows you to add numbers together, plus, subtract numbers, multiply numbers, divide numbers, and the only one here that might look a little strange to people or unfamiliar is this percent sign, but it doesn't mean percent in this context. If you use a single percent sign in a Python program...
Hold on, let me try to remember. A percent is... I don't remember.
Actually the so-called modulo operator, the operator that allows you to take the remainder after dividing one number by another. So we'll see examples of that before long, but the first 4 of these are perhaps quite familiar. Well, it turns out that in Python, you don't necessarily have to keep writing code in a file like hello.py and then running it in a terminal window. One of the features that many people like about Python is that it supports this, a so-called interactive mode. Like you can start writing Python code and immediately execute each of those lines interactively, especially if you don't care about saving all of your lines of code, you just want to execute code and get back some answers. So for instance, let me go back to VS Code here and let me close hello.py and let me click on the little triangle over here in my terminal window just to make it much bigger, just temporarily for a moment. So I'm not creating any .py file now, I'm just going to run Python by itself at my prompt. And you'll see when I do this, I get some cryptic looking output and the date and time at which the program was last updated and so forth, but I ultimately get 3 triple brackets like this. This is the interactive mode for Python. So I'm running the Python interpreter, and anytime I type a line of code in the interpreter, it's going to execute it immediately. I don't have to keep running Python again and again. It's as though in the human world, if you were standing next to a human who speaks some other language and you're just having a conversation with them back and forth, it's all happening, the translation immediately. So what might I do in interactive mode? Well, I could do something like 1 + 1, enter. That's actually code. Right? You might not think of it as code, but if you know a bit of arithmetic and you know numbers and you know plus, that's valid Python code. And you can use Python really as a fancy calculator. But I could do other things too. If I want to print to myself, hello, world, I can also print out that line of code there too, hello world. So it's interactive in the sense that the moment you execute a line of code, boom, you see the result. We're generally not going to do that because at least when teaching a language, we tend to want to do things incrementally, and we want you to be able to see where it is we came from.
Can you even save doing it like this?
Again and again, especially if we make mistakes. But know that this is indeed a feature of Python, this so-called interactive mode. But let's focus for a moment now, not just on that interactivity, but really on the fact that Python apparently supports integers and mathematics and some of those basic operations. And let's see if we can't make maybe our own little calculator. So let me go ahead and open up VS Code again, and I'm going to shrink down my terminal window, and I'm going to create a new file called calculator.py. So to do that, recall
calculator.py. So new file, calculator.py.
I can type code down here, and the name of the file I want to create, .py. Enter. That gives me a new tab up top. So I have already closed hello.py. I'm now in calculator.py, and let's just make a simple calculator that does some addition for me. But I'm going to do it in a file so that we can iterate on this and make changes for better or for worse over time. Let me go ahead and first declare a couple of variables. I'm going to do the mathematical thing of calling my first variable x, my second variable y, and then I'm going to give myself a third variable, z equals x plus y, and then I'm going to go ahead and print out z. Now this program, admittedly, not very exciting or interesting. In fact, it's a little less interesting than printing stuff on the screen like before with strings, but we'll build on this and see what other features exist in Python that we can leverage. So hopefully if Python knows its math as well as I do, when I run Python of calculator.py, I should see, hopefully, that 1 + 2 equals
right there, 3.
All right, so not that surprising and not that interesting. And honestly, this isn't the most useful program because it's always going to calculate 1 + 2.
Yeah, you want to be able to input.
Let's at least make this program, say, a little more interactive, right? We already know from previous examples how we can get input from the user. Let's bring back that input function. And let's do this. Let me go ahead now, and at the top of my code, let's change x to not be the number 1 always. Let's change it to be whatever the return value is of asking the user for x. and I can use any English or human language I want here. I'm going to say, what's X? Just like I asked before, what's your name? And I'm going to do the same thing for Y. I'm going to use input again, but this time change the question to be, what's Y? All right, at this point, I think I'm going to leave the rest of the code the same. Z equals X plus Y, and then print Z. But what's nice now is that I think I have a nice interactive calculator. Right now, it's not going to do 1 plus 2 all the time. It's going to do whatever the user types plus whatever the user types. So let's try this. Let me go ahead and run the program. All right, let's do it. 1 is going to be X. 2 is going to be Y. And of course, everyone in agreement, 1 plus 2
is
equals
55.
3. Huh. What's going on there?
It's adding the 5 to the 5,
I have misled you.
giving us 55. It's not adding 5 plus 5. It's combining 5, 5, 55. Sorry for headphone users.
The issue is that it's concatenating strings because you use the plus operator.
Ooh, concatenating.
Perfect. So perfect intuition. We've seen that plus is used a little differently in the context.
Look at them using proper words.
That is, it joins the two strings, and that seems to indeed be what's happening here, even though the user typed a number. But the interesting thing here is that when you get user input, because they're using a keyboard on their Mac or PC or their phone, it is always going to be text. It might look like a number, but by default, it's coming from the keyboard as a string.
Oh, we need to change it to integer.
So how do we go about
input
int.
If
ultimately we don't want to treat those inputs as strings, we want to treat them as.
But I don't remember. I think we put int on the outside of the first parentheses.
Sometimes from
Is
one
it?
type of data to another type of data. For instance, from string to int, by doing something like this. Let me go back into my code.
Hold on. I want to see if I'm doing it right. See if I'm remembering this correctly. Syntax error. Is it input? I don't. Hold on. We put in. Is it? We put it somewhere. Okay, tell me.
X before adding it to Y to be whatever the integer version of X is.
Is it before
plus
input?
whatever the integer version of Y is. So it.
Oh, I'm doing it in the wrong place. Stupid. Oops. I don't like how if I hit run, it should put me down here. All right, there we go.
Turns out that
We got
int
it.
is not only a type of data in Python, it's also a function. And it's a function that if you pass in an input, like a string, so long as that string looks like a number, like 1 or like 2, it will convert it to an actual number that you can perform mathematics on instead. So if I now go back to my terminal window and run Python, and let me show you another trick. Calculator is kind of a long word. It's a little tedious to type. Notice what I can do in my terminal window. In a
Probably
command line
tab-
interface in general.
tab,
If I start typing CAL for calculator, I can actually hit tab to finish my thought. So autocomplete is possible in a terminal window like this. Type the first letter or few letters, and then boom, with tab, it'll finish your thought for you. Or you can go back in your history like I did with the up and down arrows. Let me go ahead and execute this. What's X? 1. What's X? 2. And there we go. Now we have a general purpose calculator that's going to support not just addition of 1 and 2, but now any two integers that the user types. And let me now improve this, right? We've seen how we can make improvements to code, and I don't know if it's going to necessarily be better, but let's try this. Do I really need the Z variable? It's worth noting that I'm creating a variable called Z, and then I'm immediately using it on the next line of code. Now, that's not that compelling, because if you're creating a variable and then immediately using it but never again using it, did you really need to take the time to introduce another symbol and another variable just to use it once and only once? Well, maybe not. Maybe we don't really need Z.
You
in
can
this
just
way.
do print.
Maybe I should go and do something like this. Maybe I should get rid of Z here. Maybe I should change this to be int up here. Change this to be int up here. Doing something that's pretty interesting now, even though it's a bit of new syntax. Notice that you can nest functions, so to speak. You can put one function call, that is the use of a function, inside of the use of another function, so that the return value of the inner function becomes the argument to, or the input to, the outer function. So just like in math, if you have parentheses, 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 your teacher probably taught you to focus on what's inside the innermost parentheses first and then work your way out. Same thing with programming. That's what Python's going to do. It's going to look at what's inside of the parentheses first, it's going to get the answer, and then it's going to pass the return value to the outermost function. So what happens on line 1 now is that the input function gets called first, then the result of that, quote unquote 1, becomes the input to the int function, and same on line 2. The output of what's y becomes the input to this int function. And
print
now there is
something.
no z.
Just
We
print.
just do print x plus y. And because I've taken the time to convert each of those strings to an integer, I think we're okay. So let me try this. Python of calculator.py, enter 1 and 2, and we're still getting 3. Not 12.
Ah.
12, 1, 2, we're indeed getting 3. And we've additionally gotten
Got
rid of the
3.
variable because we didn't necessarily need it seems, especially if only using it once. Well, here too, let me put everyone's hands down for just a moment, and let me ask, as before, this version now,
Wait.
which uses int around the invocations of input,
Where'd my...
and does not use z, is this better than the previous version? If you want to vote yes, go ahead. Or if you prefer the old way, vote no.
I prefer the old way.
As we vote, instead looked like this.
I prefer the old way because I think to me it's easier to
Back to
read,
now the
but
newest
I
version.
can
Let's take
see
a hand of the yeses. Someone who thinks this latest
Either-
version
either
is
way.
better.
I think this way is better because it allows us to immediately see what the x and y variables are with integers, and so we know what to expect from them. And also the print argument is more intuitive. We avoid too much clutter in the code.
I think those are all good reasons. It's nice and succinct. The lines of code are not very long. I don't need to know what z is because it doesn't exist. It just see print x plus y. I like that. But someone who prefers the older way, where we did have z, and we more explicitly passed individual variables to the int function.
we could use Z in other
I
ways
think,
too.
The earlier version is better because when, if user input something else other than in, let's say they type 1 and 2, so it will be easier to debug.
This version, or this version here, or the old version?
The old version.
Okay, that's fair. And in fact, I'm being very careful today as best I can not to mess up. I have thus far only inputted integers when I'm expecting integers, and Raul's actually pointing to something we'll come back to in the coming weeks. How do we actually handle errors? What if the user doesn't type in the number 1, or the number 2, or a number at all? What if they type in a word like cat, C-A-T? That's not a number, and I bet I can't convert it to an integer, but for today, I'm not going to focus on that. I'm just going to hope that the user cooperates, but that's not going to be the case, and so perhaps one way would set us up for more success when it comes to handling those errors. Now, for today's purposes, which is better? I like both, and I think both of you made very valid arguments, and there too, so long as you have a justification that feels pretty reasonable, that's what ultimately matters. But acquiring, again, a sense of the trade-offs here. Well, is this way better? If so, why or why not? Just understanding what those trade-offs are. But generally speaking,
I think no matter which way you do, someone's going to either like it or dislike it for whatever reasons, right? Like you're not gonna have everybody agree on everything. So just kind of make it make sense to you, so that way you can get a working product. Is my thinking behind it. Whatever is most comfortable, whatever makes it easier for you to read. That's my opinion.
prioritize prioritizing readability is a very good thing.
There you go.
Making your code readable for someone else is a very good thing, and very good for you too, so that when you wake up the next morning or you come back the next week or the next year, you too can read your own code without having to waste time trying to remember what you did. And simplicity tends to be a good thing too, keeping your code simple. So as you get more comfortable with programming, you might be tempted to try to like combine an entire program into one long line. For instance, let me do just that. Technically speaking, we don't really need X in a variable. We don't really need Y in a variable. We could also do this. I could just get rid of X and Y altogether. I could then now eliminate that and make it just one line of code. Okay, so on some sense you might be inclined to think, wow, that's really nice.
That is really unreadable. You know, if you're scanning a document, you know, if it's underneath each other, it's a lot more readable than it is to have to with your eyes.
Made it one simple line of code. I would argue this actually isn't that simple. Now I think I'm starting to nest too many things. I have to think about print and int and input. I then have to notice that, okay, I've opened 2 parentheses, I've closed 2 of them, there's a plus. You're making me think too much. And anytime you make me think, you're wasting time. And anytime you complicate the look of the code like this, you're just going to increase the probability of mistakes, syntactical mistakes or logical errors in your code. So of all the things we've done, this is the only one that I would argue, yes, it's one line and it's nice and compact, it's just not readable enough. I would shy away from doing this, especially since 2 of those function calls are getting input from the user. But there too, reasonable people might disagree, but that's the kind of like visceral reaction you should have sometimes when code starts getting a little too complicated, a little too clever, perhaps for its own good. All right, well, it's not just integers we have access to. Let me propose that we transition from integers to
Float,
more data types,
decibels.
namely a float. So again, a string is a sequence of text. An int is an integer like -1, 0, and 1. A float is a number with a decimal point, properly called a floating point value. And you can think of the floating point as being the decimal that might be over here or over here with some number of digits to the left or the right. Mathematically, it's a real number, a number that has a decimal point in it. So that's a third type of data that Python supports. Right now, our calculator is somewhat naively assuming that the user is only going to type in integers. But if I want to support floating point values too, I think I can just make a couple of tweaks. So I'm going to go back to VS Code here, and instead of just converting the user's input, X and Y, to integers on line 1 and 2, let's just make a simple change. Let's actually convert it to a float on the first line and a float on the second line here. Now I think if I go down to my terminal window and run Python of calculator.py, let's type in a number like 1.2 with a decimal point and 3.4 with a decimal point, and there we go. We have 4.6 as the final answer. So that wouldn't have worked before if I was only expecting integers from the user, but now that I'm expecting floating point values and accommodating it, I can actually now do floating point arithmetic as well. But suppose that I don't really want the final answer to be a floating point value like 4.6, I would be happy if we just round to the nearest integer. So I want to support the user typing in floating point values with decimal points, but at the end of the day, I just want to round the result to the nearest possible integer, for instance. Well, it turns out that here too, Python comes with some functionality built in. And in fact, if we return to this URL from earlier, wherein all of the Python built-in functions are listed, there's one called round, which does exactly as we would expect. It takes as input a number and then rounds it for us.
We're going to do print, round, parentheses, X plus Y.
But if we look a little closer at that documentation, as we can here, I'll provide an excerpt. This is what the function looks like in the documentation. And recall that earlier we looked at the documentation for print, and this is similar in spirit, that this shows us not just the name of the function, but its available parameters. That is, inputs that we can provide when using this function. But this is a little cryptic too.
Is that
like
number digits?
And it adds some syntax. So let's see. The name of this function here is, of course, round, and its first argument is a number. Notice this time there's no star. There's no star objects like there was for print. The round function takes just one number as its first argument, period. That's its positional parameter. But notice this syntax, and this is a convention in programming or technology more generally. Generally speaking, when you see square brackets in documentation like this, this means that you're about to see something optional. And so what this means is that if you want to specify more precisely the number of digits that you want the round function to round to,
Gotcha.
you can specify it here by adding a comma and then that number. So if we read the documentation, if you don't specify a number of digits, you just specify the number to round, it rounds to the nearest integer. But suppose you want to round to the 10th place or the 100th place, that is 1 or 2 digits after the decimal point, you could additionally
So you can
pass
just
in
do
comma
round
1
number
or comma
without
2
the end digits.
to be more precise. So that's what the documentation there is saying. Let's see if we can't then translate this to some actual code for us. So if I go back now to VS Code, and I consider that I want to go ahead and round x and y, I can do this in a couple of ways. I could do round x plus y, but you know, I'd actually kind of prefer to break this now out into 2 lines. I don't have to, and reasonable people here might disagree, but I'd like to revert to a scenario where I'm printing z so that I can just a little more clearly to myself, to others, say z equals the rounded result of x plus y. It's not necessarily the better way to do it, but I'm a little more comfortable with breaking out my thoughts one at a time, especially if I want to start commenting each of these chunks of code. All right, let me go down to my terminal window now and run Python of calculator.py. What's x? Let's do 1.2 again. Then let's do 3.4. And now it was previously 4.6, but now it's been rounded up to the nearest integer, which of course is going to be 5. All right, what if I wanted to change this a little further? What if I wanted to support maybe really big numbers, irrespective of rounding? Let's just do something like this. Let me go ahead and run Python of calculator.py again, and let me just add 999 plus 1. And notice I don't have to type decimal points, even though I'm converting to float. My program will just allow me to type decimal points, but I don't need to oblige. The answer, of course, here should be, and is in fact 1,000, whether or not we round. So that's just arithmetic with integers here. But in the US, we tend to format long numbers by putting commas after or before every triple of digits. Other countries flip it and they use periods and commas instead. That's a system setting. You can change that on your own Mac or PC or device for Python or any language, but for me, I'm using the US approach here, which is periods for decimal points and commas for separators.
Merca.
What if I wanted this to be outputted as 1, comma 000? Just to make it a little more clear that it's 1,000 and not something like 100. That's even more useful when it's like 1 million, 1, comma 000, comma 000. Wouldn't it be nice if we could automatically output those numbers as well? Well, it turns out that we can. There is a way using Python to actually specify that we want to include commas like this. And here we have an opportunity to bring back our old friend, the F string. First, let me do something that's not that productive. First, let me do this. Let me print out the value of z, but wait a minute. I can't just say quote-unquote z, because that's literally going to print z on the screen. So let me wrap it with those curly braces, like I did before, but that too was not enough. I literally needed to add an f at the beginning of my string to tell Python that this is an f string, a format string. That now is going to print out, not very interestingly, just the value of z itself. So that I'm going to great lengths just to print z, when really I could have just passed z as the sole argument. But just to ensure that I haven't broken it, let's do this again. 999 plus 1, enter. Okay, it's still 1,000, so I didn't make anything worse. But notice, and this syntax is unfortunately a bit cryptic, notice that I can actually do this. I can put a colon after the z, and I can put a comma thereafter. This looks very cryptic, admittedly, and even I have to constantly look things like this up in the documentation to remember the syntax. But here, let me run it again. Python of calculator.py, 999, 1, and now notice that the number has been automatically formatted for me. If I were in a different country or locale, I could absolutely override this to use periods instead of commas or vice versa. But in this case here, it's just happening for me automatically. So there too, we see a hint of what it means to really format a string. There's even more power, more powerful capabilities built into that. All right, let me pause here to see if there's any questions now on floats, on rounding, or on this use of f strings.
Yes, so I have a question. So when using floats, is there like a cap to how many decimal points it can have?
A really good question. So floats, yes, and this is a problem we'll revisit before long.
Why would you want more than one
Floats
decimal point?
cannot represent numbers infinitely precisely. in a nutshell because computers only have so much memory.
Or does she
They only have a
mean
finite amount of memory?
the
You and I
numbers
only have a
behind the
finite,
point?
Amount of hardware inside of the computer. So
Maybe
at
I'm
some
the
point,
one
they're going to have to
misunderstanding.
round. Right now I'm rounding automatically. Effectively, computers will eventually have to do that for us. But we'll see that as a fundamental problem before long. Allow me to turn back just for a few final examples on float before we introduce a few final examples that allow us not just to use functions, but to make our own. Let me propose that we also try our hand at a bit of division here. Let me propose that we modify this calculator now to still take a couple of floats, but let's now just do something a little simpler than, a little different from this, just doing x divided by y. And let me go ahead and get rid of my format string and just keep it simple for now, printing out z instead. And what are we going to see here? Well, just some simple division. So Python of calculator.py, let's do something like 2 divided by 3. And of course, I get 0.66666. And to Ethan's question a moment ago, it does seem to be finite. It's not rounding in a weird way here, but I only seem to see so
No, it doesn't
many
round.
digits.
You'd
That's
think it'd round up the
an
last one to
inevitability
7.
of
Oops, sorry.
using a float in this way. By contrast, just so you know, integers nowadays in Python can be as big as you want them to be. Unlike other languages, there is no upper bound on how big an int can be now in Python, but there is a bound on just how precise a floating point value can be. All right, now that I've got some simple division working here, let's go ahead and round this. It would be nice to round this really long number, 0.6666666, and so forth, to maybe just 2 decimal places. We've seen how to do this with round, though, at least in its documentation. Let's just round this, not to the nearest int, by passing in just x divided by y, which is one argument. Once the math is done inside of the parentheses, I don't want to pass in just one argument. I want to pass in 2 so that I can specify in digits, number of digits, which recall was the second parameter for round. Let me go ahead and run Python of calculator.py. I'll do the same thing, 2 and then 3. 0.67. So here too we see a way of rounding now, not just to a nearest integer, but to a nearest number of digits. But there's another way to do this here, and in fact this evokes our F string example again. Let me go ahead and change this. Suppose that you didn't remember the round function, or for some reason you didn't want to use it. You instead want to just use a format string. Well, let's go there. Let me do quote unquote z, but let me surround it with those curly braces. Let me add the f at the beginning, and again, this is not interesting yet. This is just going to print out z, but I'm adding a lot more complexity to turn it into an f string. But notice, I can do something else after my variable name, after the colon. If this were going to be a big integer, I might want to use a comma, like before, to separate each triple of numbers with commas, but I don't. I'm going to use a different sequence of characters.
2.
I'm going to say 0.2f. And this, too, is one of these very cryptic things I have to constantly look up because I forget if I don't use it that
2
often.
decimals
So don't
behind the
intimidate
dot.
if this looks especially weird, but this is, according to the documentation, the way you specify using an F string how many digits you want to print. So let me run this version of the calculator, type in 2 and then 3, we get the exact same thing. But again, this is just consistent with my claim that in programming we can so very often solve the same problem in multiple ways. This is just now the F string approach to that very same problem. All right, which one is better? It depends. In this case, they're pretty equivalent. You could imagine, though, it being useful to use a function sometimes so that you can pass in an argument like n digits as that second argument, or you can imagine just deciding in advance that you want 0.2 and then writing it like this. Let's transition now from focusing on strings and on integers and on floats to focusing now on functions themselves. We began today by focusing on how you can use functions that come with Python.
And if you are watching this, please like and subscribe. If you're rewatching this, please like and subscribe. Share it with a friend who wants to learn Python. Let them know that there's a thing for free from Harvard through EDX that you can learn Python or SQL or JavaScript or just programming as a whole, completely free. It's awesome.
But wouldn't it be nice if you could invent your own functions, especially if, to our point earlier, you find yourself solving the same kind of problem again?
I don't remember what def means.
And again, it's nice that Python comes with the print function because it's really useful to be able to print things on the screen, but wouldn't it be nice if you could print specific things on the screen by just calling your own function? Well, let me propose that we do this. Let me go back to VS Code here, and let me propose that we go back to hello.py. I'm going to reopen hello.py where we left it before, and I'm going to go ahead now and propose that we consider how we can start improving this further by making our own function. I have written so many programs today that just say hello, and each time I'm using print, but wouldn't it have been nice if from the beginning of today we could just call a function called hello that just says hello for us? Now, the authors of Python years ago didn't think that we need a special function just to say hello, but I would like that to exist. I'm saying hello so many times, I just want to be able to call a function hello. So I'm going to start from scratch here. I'm going to delete all of my code.
Alright, so let's open my hello.py. And we are deleting everything
From earlier, and I'm going to pretend for the moment that a function called hello exists. And I'm going to do just as I did before. I'm going to get the user's name with the input function, asking what's your name, question mark. And now I'm going to call a function hello, and then I'm going to print out the user's name. Now, I will admit hello doesn't exist, so bad things are about to happen, but let's see what. Let me go down to my terminal window. Let me run Python of hello.py. I think the first line is going to be okay, because that worked before. And indeed, it's prompting me for my name. So let me type in David. The second line of code is apparently calling a function that looks like it's called hello, because why is it a function? It has a parenthesis and a closed parenthesis immediately after it.
Gosh darn it.
Every function we've used has looked like, but Python's not going to recognize this one. When I hit enter now, I get a name error. Name hello is not defined. Did you mean help?
Oh, I didn't.
Although it's opportune, that's what I need at this point, is some help. But I'm encountering this error because why? The function just doesn't exist. So how do I make this function exist? Well, I need to create it myself using this keyword, def. Def for define. So here too, just as str is short for string and int is short for integer, def is short for define. If and when you want to define, create, invent your own functions, you can do so using now this keyword in Python. So let me go back to my code here, and let me propose that we define this perhaps in this way. At the very top of my file, I'm going to first take a moment to define a function called hello using def hello, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, colon. What this means now is that Python is going to treat every line of code that I indent underneath this one as the meaning of this new function hello. So def is important, as is the space. I get to choose the name of the function, and I'm choosing to call it hello. The parentheses with nothing inside means that this function at the moment is not going to take any inputs, no arguments there too. The colon means stay tuned for some indentation. Everything that's indented beneath this line of code is going to be part of this function. It's going to be a super short function, one line of code. It's just going to print out quote unquote hello. But now on lines 1 and 2, I have invented my own function hello. Notice these dots that have now magically appeared here. This is just a setting of my text editor, VS Code in this case, that's just making super explicit to me that I've hit the spacebar 4 times, or equivalently the tab key once, which is converted automatically to 4 spaces. Generally speaking, I'm going to need to make sure that all of my indented code lines up now so that Python knows that it's all part of the same thing. But it's easy in this case because it's just a single line. But now, thanks to lines 1 and 2, the function hello will absolutely exist when I'm ready to use it on line 6. So let me go down to my terminal window and run Python of hello.py, enter. Here comes my name again. And now, when I hit enter, I now see hello, David. All right, we've kind of regressed though, right? This is not nearly as pretty as it once was. I think we can probably do better than this by improving things further. Why don't we consider though how we might say parameterize this same function? That is to say, can we customize hello to maybe take the user's name as input so that we can say not only hello, but the person's name all on one line, all in one breath? Well, I think we can do this. Let me propose that we do this as follows. Let me go ahead and up in my code, let me inside of these parentheses, let me come up with my own parameter name. I have complete choice here, and I'm going to say that the name of my parameter will be the word to. Why? Because I want my function to sound like the verb it represents, hello, but who do you want to say hello to? Well, I'm going to call my parameter for this function to just because in English it kind of sounds nice to me. Hello to. Who do you want to say hello to? That's why I'm calling this parameter to.
This one seems a lot more convoluted.
All right, well, what do I want to do with the word to? Well, I can do a couple of different things. We've seen like so many different ways to implement hello. Let me just add a comma there for grammar's sake, and then let me put the word to after that as the second argument to the function hello. There's other ways we can do this, and we've seen so many, but this one looks a little clear to me, I'll say. What's going to happen next? Well, I don't think I need this extra print line here. I think what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to go ahead here and print out not the person's name manually. I'm going to instead say hello, parentheses, name. So what am I now doing? On lines 1 and 2, I'm defining my very own function called hello. But this time, that function has been designed to take a parameter, a single parameter, as input. And I'm using the value of that parameter, which I called to plug into print so that I see not only hello, but also that person's name. What am I doing on line 5? Same as always. I'm just getting the user's name. Line 6, I'm not only calling hello, I'm passing as input the name variable as an argument, so that's what gets passed into hello. And what's happening here is essentially this.
I still hit
Even
save.
though the variable is called name here, when the function itself is called, the computer assumes that that same value is now called to. So name is essentially copied to another variable called to, so that in the context of hello, I can say hello to that variable instead. And we'll see in a moment what happens if we don't keep those straight. Let me go ahead and run Python of hello.py, enter. What's your name? And now I'm crossing my fingers, enter. There we go. We're back in business. But now I have my own custom function called hello that's allowing me to say hello to a specific person. And here's where now things can get really fancy. What if you wanted your hello function to say hello to someone specific, but you know what, if you don't know who you want to say hello to, you want to say hello to the whole world, you can give parameters default values. We've seen that. Recall that with print, there was a default value for sep, for the separator. There was a default value for end, the line ending. We can do that too, and here's the syntax. If you want the value of this parameter, by default, if not provided by the programmer, to be equal to quote-unquote world, you literally do that in the same line you're defining the function. And I'll admit, it's starting to look more cryptic.
Yes.
But I'm still just defining a function called hello.
I have no idea what we're doing now.
To, but I'm assigning it with the equal sign a default value of quote-unquote world, just in
So
case
say
the
hello
programmer
world,
doesn't call hello
my name
with an argument. And we can see this here. Let me change my code to use hello in 2 ways. On line 5, I'm going to very simply call hello, no arguments. Then on line 6, I'm going to get the name. Line 7, I'm going to call hello with an argument.
Say hello
see hello
world
now being used in 2 ways. Let me go ahead and run Python of hello.py. I'll type in my name. Oh, interesting. Notice I already see hello world, but that's expected because line 5 happens before line 6.
I see.
But once I type my name, now the program's going to be a little more polite and say hello to me personally. So there too, we see with relatively simple but new syntax how you can implement functionality very similar in spirit to what the print function gave us automatically. Now you have control over doing
hello
that
world.
yourself.
This is so 2 equals world. So this is equaling world. So it's printing hello world. And then name. So then the what's your name? Type in the name, hello, Wayne. But hello also. So I get why it's printing the what's or the hello world. So I want to hold on a second. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Undo, copy. Let's I get why it prints hello world, but what is triggering hello name? How I am reading it, it should say hello world what's your name? Insert name. Then hello world name. I don't know if it's going to understand what I'm trying to get at or not. Just one time misread in the flow of execution. Let's break it down step by step so it clicks. Hello came first, prints hello world. I get that. Input what's your name runs next. Got that. Hello name. Hello name is called prints. Okay. Okay, hello name is called prints. Hello whatever was entered. Oh, I see what. Okay, it's printing hello name. It's not printing 2. Okay, duh. I was just having a duh moment. That makes sense.
Make this point too. One of the whole points of defining your own functions is one, just to avoid having to repeat yourself again and again. You don't have to actually keep reinventing the wheel and keep using the print function again and again and again if you just want to say hello. Wouldn't it be nice now if I could kind of move this code that I wrote for defining the hello function, and just to be dramatic, I'm going to hit enter a whole lot of times, 50 lines down.
I don't want to do
put
that.
my definition of hello way further down in this file.
It'll do it, but it'll do
Well,
it backwards,
just for the spirit
right?
of out of sight, out of mind. Because if I now rewind to the start of my program, now you can sort of take for granted
this
that,
stuff is
hello
first,
a function. Why? Because it's
and
there
this
on
is
line
second
one, and
now.
it has an open parenthesis and a closed parenthesis.
That's
So what
my
comes out is that call this
hypothesis.
function, and then on line 2, we're getting a variable from the user by typing in their name, and then we're calling hello, passing in that value. Well, at this point, I can just take for granted that hello exists, even if it's way down further in the file, or as we'll see in future weeks, even if it's in a different file altogether. But there's a problem here, and let me go ahead and run this version of hello.py. Notice that as soon as I run the interpreter, Python of hello.py, I see a name error. Name hello is not defined. Again,
because hello is defined after we use hello, correct?
Did you mean help? Well, again, fitting. I do need some help here, but I didn't mean to call the function help. The problem here, though, is that Python is just taking me literally. I have defined my function hello all the way down here, but I'm trying to use it way up here, and that's not allowed. Python's interpreter is going to take you literally, and if you use a function, it must already exist by the time you are calling it. So how do I fix this? Well, apparently I can't do that. I have to define any functions I want at the very top of my file, but that too could get me into a bit of trouble eventually, because if I constantly have to define a function above where I want to use it, you're kind of writing code in reverse. You're constantly writing functions up here, up here, up here, as opposed to like writing your code logically top to bottom. So let me fix this in a more standard way, which is to do this. Generally speaking, you do want to put the main part of your code at the top of your file. And in fact, I'm going to go so far as to define my function called main. It's not a requirement, but it's indeed a convention, and this just connotes to the reader that this is the main part of my program. I'm going to get rid of my empty hello call now and only pass in one version with hello name. And then down here, a couple lines further down, I'll actually define my hello function. Unfortunately, now that I've reordered the functions in this way, by putting the main part of my code at the top and hello at the bottom so that my logic kind of flows top to bottom, if I go ahead and run Python of hello.py enter, nothing whatsoever happens. If I do it again, nothing whatsoever.
Because you've only defined, but you're not actually running it, correct?
Happens. Well, why in the world is this? Well, just because I've defined a function called main and I've defined a function called hello doesn't mean that I've actually called, that is, used either of them. Yes, I'm using hello inside of main, but no one is telling Python to actually use or call main. So in order to tidy this up, the last thing I need to do in this file, it seems, is actually call my main function. And in fact, by calling my main function in this way...
Okay, hold on. I need to type this out here. So, it'll probably be best if I just do this. Notice it automatically indented me when I hit enter. 2 equals world. So now, I think it's going to ask for the name. You give it the name, it's going to print the name, and then it's going to do the hello world. So it's basically what we did, but backwards.
It gets me out of trouble because now I'm
Maybe.
defining main first, but I'm not calling hello yet. I'm defining hello next, but I'm not calling hello next. I only, at the very end of this file, call main, which has the effect of running this code up here, which has the effect of running this code down here, and it allows me, therefore, to organize my file and order my functions in any way I want, including main at the very top, and solving, ultimately, that problem of Python not knowing what's going on. Now, it's important to note that I defined my function hello as taking an argument, 2, and then I passed into that function the value of the variable that I wanted to say hello to, that is the variable called name. Because suppose I had done something a little bit differently. Suppose that I hadn't defined hello as taking an argument, so I just remove mention of 2 and its default value, help world, and I go back to my main function and I just call hello itself without passing in any argument. And now, let me go ahead and make one more change, one more mistake technically. Let me go ahead and just try to naively print out the value of name in the hello function. So now to be clear, in my main function on line 2, I'm defining my variable called...
What did I do wrong here? I guess you didn't even run it. Because I never did the hello world.
name and assigning it the return value of the input function from the user. I'm then just calling hello. In my hello function, which now no longer takes any arguments, I am calling print, passing in hello, comma, and then immediately passing in name, the variable into which I got the user's input. But the catch is that name exists now only in main, and so watch what happens when I try to run this version of the program with Python hello.py. I hit enter, I'm prompted for my name, DAVID, enter, and a name error. Name, quote unquote, is not defined. So it turns out that this is actually an issue of what's called scope. Scope refers to a variable only existing in the context in which you defined it. So insofar as I define this variable name in my main function, I can only use that variable in my main function. I can't use it, as I've tried to here in my hello function. It doesn't exist in that so-called scope. And so this is why now, if I rewind and undo all of those changes, you'll see that I'm deliberately passing main from my main function into my hello function. And now in the hello function, it technically has a different name. It's called to in that context, but that's fine. It's completely up to each individual function to name its own variables or name its own arguments. But this is a way now that I'm handing to the hello function the value of that variable so it can be printed by hello as well. And there's one final flourish we can add here. Now that we've implemented hello, you'll notice that hello only has a so-called side effect. It only prints out something to the screen. Well, what if I also want my function to not have a side effect per se, but actually hand me back a value? Recall that the input function returns a value, the string that the user typed in. Recall that the int function returns a value, the float function returns a value that was passed into it. Well, you can use one final keyword here, literally return, to return a value explicitly yourself. In fact, let me go back to VS Code here, and I think we'll return our attention to calculator.py and see if we can't implement one other version of calculator.py that actually has our own function that even returns a value. So I'm going to go ahead and open up calculator.py, and I think this time I'm going to throw everything away as before, and I'm just going to start practicing what we're preaching here. Define a function called main, which is now going to be the main part of my function. Let's go ahead and now declare a variable called x and assign it to the converted version of the user's input after asking them what's x. So again, a line of code quite like we've done before. And suppose now that what I want to do is square this value. I want to take the number that the user's typed in and raise it to the power of 2. So 2 squared would be 4. 3 squared would be 9. 4 squared would be 16, and so forth. Well, how do I go about implementing a function literally called square, which actually doesn't come with Python built in? Well, let me assume for the moment
X,
that it
or
does exist.
do
and
y
let me say
times
something
x
like
times
this.
x.
Let me go ahead and say that printing, how about x squared is comma square of x. So what have I done? I've defined a function called main, and I've implemented 2 lines. The first of these lines prompts the user for a value x and converts it to an int and stores it in a variable called x. On line 3, I then say x squared is, and then I pass a second argument to the print function, whatever the return value is of a square function. But square doesn't exist, and I'll show you this here. If I now call main at the bottom, and I run Python of calculator.py, I'll see that x is 2, and then I see a whole bunch of errors. A name error, name square is not defined. So this isn't a typo here, it's just the function doesn't exist, but I think I can make it exist here. Let me go ahead and define another function called square. This one's going to take in a number, and I'm going to call it generically n, as many a programmer would, just to represent any old number. And then what do I want to do in order to square n? Well, a number squared is really just itself times itself, so I'm going to do this, n times n. But it's not enough just to do the math yourself, n times n. You're going to have to return the actual value, n times n, and that's our new keyword here. When I now do this, watch what happens. Python of calculator.py, enter, x say shall be 2, x squared is 4. Let me go ahead now and say x is now 3, x squared is now 9. So I've implemented my very own function that returns the square of a value, and because I'm using the return keyword, that ensures that I can pass the return value of this, just like the return value of input or int or float, to another function, like print instead. And here too, there's going to be so many ways to solve this same problem. I can actually raise n to the power of 2. We've not seen the syntax before, but if you use 2 asterisks like this, 2 stars, that raises the thing on the left to the power on the right. Or it turns out there is in Python a function called pow for raising something to the power that takes 2 arguments, the first of which is the number, the second of which is the exponent. So there too, there's just so many ways to actually solve that same problem as well. So ultimately, what have we done here? We first introduced functions. These actions are verbs, many of which come built into Python that you can just use in your own code. We then introduced variables via which you can store those return values and then maybe do something more with it. At the end of the day, too, you now have the ability to create, to invent your own functions to solve simple problems like hello, or in the weeks to come, much more sophisticated, more challenging, more fun problems as well.
All right. So that was the first video of the series. Let's see, what are notes? So it's just some basically what we went over. Bugs, improving your first Python program. So summing up, return values, defs, vote. Okay. So if we go back to this, problem set 0. What to do? Submit this form. Visit this link, log into your GitHub account, and click Authorize CS50. Check the box indicating that you would like to grant course staff access to your submissions and click Join Course. I think I already did this. Let me do this just in case I have to still log in. I don't want to allow. Name, username, switch account. I guess. I don't remember what my GitHub. Hopefully. Okay. What is my... Okay. Um... Oh. So I'm having to fill out a form to submit so that the CS50 people have access to my GitHub. That is not the town I live in. Oops. Okay. Okay. Did that. Okay. Log in with your GitHub account and click Authorize CS50. You don't seem to have any submissions yet for the... You can submit via Submit 50. Okay, I already did that stuff. Once your code space is loaded, well, the problem is now yeah. So now I have like a web browser version, but I needed the I needed the instructions. So I go back to the actual class. Then go back to the class. Pick off where you left off. Resume course. Okay. Execute update 50 in CodeSpace terminal window to ensure that your CodeSpace is up to date. Click rebuild now. Where am I doing update 50? Execute update 50 in CodeSpace's terminal window. There's terminal. This is... Oh, is this line moving? Opening remote. Is it still? Oh, there it goes. Okay. It's just really slow, apparently. Okay. So, update 50. Okay, I guess it's submit all the problems below. Okay, so I don't want to do the actual, I'm not going to actually, what's going on in here? Not a whole lot. Trying to learn some Python through the EDX class, completely free. Anybody can sign up. It's all good. So I don't want to actually do this on, let's just click on one to see what the problem is. So writing in all caps is like yelling. Best use your indoor. Okay, I get it. So it's basically just having us do little, write little tiny programs and then submit. So I don't know what the rules are for sharing work. So I'm not going to do the actual little assignments on stream. I'm going to do that off stream and then and submit, just to make sure I'm not violating any academic stuff, if that makes sense. So I think it's actually, I'm going to actually end it here. And then probably work on it tomorrow because it's 10 o'clock and 5 a.m. was a long time ago. And I am ready for bed. But again, just to wrap up, CS50 license. So the CS50 classes through Harvard or the EDX, completely free. You can sign up. You can there's a bunch of different courses you can do for computer science. Completely free. You get a little certificate at the end. You can pay money to get like a verified certificate. And it's all free. And the license, this stuff can be copy redistributed material in any medium or format. So like I can stream myself watching it and working through the problems, or the course material. You can adapt the material. You just gotta let people know what you did. Appropriate credit in the description down below. There's links to the class and to the license, and yeah. So, and I can't profit off of it, so I'm not monetized. My channel's not even monetized, but if I one day become monetized, I'll unmonetize these. If you see any ads, it's YouTube, it's not me, and I don't have like any links to any tip jars or anything in these streams. So with that said, I think that's it for this one, peeps. I am going to go to bed. Tomorrow I will work on these assignments off stream. I will probably later tomorrow night get on, probably stream a little Net Plus stuff, and probably stream some Python stuff as well. Probably be later because I imagine it's supposed to be a super nice day, a super nice weekend. I imagine we'll probably go do some disc golfing and enjoy the outside and touch some grass because it has been brutally hot here and just disgusting. So it's going to be nice to enjoy the outside a little bit, get some sun, get some fresh air. So I hope you guys do the same. Hope you guys enjoy your evening, and I will likely see you all tomorrow. Please remember to like, subscribe. I'm trying to grow this thing. Share it with any friends or whatever, acquaintances that may be looking to get into coding or into the IT world or anything like that. It's just going to be This channel should be filled with all sorts of content in the upcoming days, weeks, months, years, and so on and so forth. Cheers.